What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. A blonde man in his mid-20s, wearing a Junin uniform of Konoha no Sato, blue hat 8 on his head, walked through a white hallway that smelled of antiseptic, clearly identifying that the hallway was in a hospital. Over his uniform he wore a white cloak that had the kanji for yellow flash on the back and flames running along its bottom. This man was Namikaze Minato, Yondaime Hokage and hero of the Third Great Shinobi War, nicknamed Konoha's Yellow Flash, for his famed Hiraishin technique. But even though the Hiraishin made him virtually invincible on the battlefield of war, against the challenges he now faced it was worthless. Minato caught glimpses of the first challenge each time he passed by a window, the sight of a giant fox with 9 massive tails being hard to miss. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, the most powerful of the 9 Biju, was taken from its Jinchuriki and Minato*'s wife Uzumaki Kushina. During giving birth to their twin child Naruto and Akane Uchiha Madara had come, took Kushina, freed Kyuubi and ordered it to attack Konoha after hypnotizing it with his bloodline Sharingan. Minato had saved Kushina, taken her and twins to hospital and made after some battle Madara to escape. But Kyuubi was still attacking Konoha and just about every technique Minato had was useless. It was the just about that had Minato walking through the halls of the Konoha hospital instead of out there with his shinobi fighting the great beast. And it was here in the hospital where he had to face his second challenge, cursing one of his just-born twins. Among the numerous jutsu Minato knew, there was only one that had a chance of defeating a demon. It had been a difficult decision to make, considering the price needed to pay to use it, but there was really no other choice. He had to use the Shiki Fusion to seal the Kyuubi into one of his newborn children, at the cost of his own life. As he reached his wife's room, he found 2 men waiting for him outside it. The first was a man of moderate height who wore a set of long, primarily white robes. His head was bald and had a liver spot that showed his advancing age. Smoking on his pipe was the Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi. Next to him was tall man that stood several inches above 6 feet. His clothing, which consisted of simple green trousers and shirt with a red vest and clogs, were designed to help him blend into a crowd no matter where he went, even with the few pieces of shinobi equipment he visibly wore. The 3 most distinguishing features about the man was his long spiky mane of white hair, the red marks that created teardrop trails down from his eye, and the large scroll he kept strapped to his back. This was Jiraiya of the Sannin, student of the Sandaime and teacher of the Yondaime. "Hello Minato-kun," greeted the Sandaime. "Yo Gaki," said Jiraiya. "Sandaime-sama, Ero Sennin." Minato greeted. He noted how his sensei didn't even so much as scowl at his hated nickname. That meant there was something very serious on the Sannin's mind, and it probably had something to do with what Minato was about to do. "Is there a reason why you 2 are here? We could ask the same of you," replied Jiraiya. "You're not even a cage for a year and you already have a problem the size the Hokage mountain breathing down your neck." Literally in this case. Puffing on his pipe the Sandaime continued. "But there is a reason for us being here. We heard that Kushina-chan just gave birth to 2 healthy and happy babies. That and we had a feeling that we would find you here." Minato glanced at Jiraiya and said, "So you figured it out, sensei?" Giving his student one of his rare serious looks, the old pervert said, "Of course I figured it out. I did help you design the seal after all. And, I must say that I am disappointed that you are thinking about using it. What choice do I have, sensei? In case you haven't noticed, there's a giant fox threatening to destroy the village that none of our techniques have any effect on. The only chance we have is if I use the Shiki Fusion to seal it. And you know better than anyone, sensei, that to seal a Biju that there has to be 2 human components. One to provide a soul to bind the beast and another sacrifice to seal it," Minato said in a stern voice that carried his full authority as village leader. He tried marching past the 2 older shinobi, but Jiraiya and Sarutobi managed to get a good grip on his shoulders to prevent him from walking in the hospital room. "Listen Gaki, we know that the Shiki Fusion has to be used," said Jiraiya, getting his student to stop his struggling. "The problem we have is how you obviously planned to do this yourself." Narrowing his eyes, Minato said, "What are you talking about, Ero Sennin? Of course I'm going to do this myself. I'm the Hokage and it's my duty to be willing to give my life in exchange for this village. That may be true, Minato-kun, but don't forget that I myself was Hokage and that the same duty falls to me," said the Sandaime as he continued to restrain his successor. "And, if you die without naming a successor, then I must be reinstated as village leader. I am no longer a young man and don't have many years left. It would be much wiser for me to do this task in your place. Listen to the old man," urged Jiraiya as the two finally let go of the Yondaime. "As much as I hate the idea letting anyone die, I have to be practical and agree with Sensei. You're young, you have a new family to take care of. Let those who already have a foot in the grave take the suicide mission," he said, getting slapped in the back of the head by the Sandaime who was muttering about not being that old. Giving a sigh, Minato said, "Everything you two said makes sense, but my mind is made up. As the Hokage and the creator of the Shiki Fusion, it is my responsibility to use it." "I was afraid that you would say that," sighed the Sandaime, who moved behind Minato. A second later the Yondaime collapsed on the floor, knocked out thanks to a chop to the back of his neck. Shaking his head, Jiraiya muttered while lifting Minato onto his shoulder. "The kid's an incredible shinobi, but sometimes he is too damn noble for his own good." Sighing, the toad Sannin turned to his teacher and asked, "Are you sure you've got the jutsu down, Sensei?" "Hi, just be sure to be ready to summon Gamabunta and to apply the Hake no Fuin Shiki and Shisho Fuin at a moment's notice. As hard as defeating the Kyuubi will be, this will be much harder. Yeah, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and that pales in comparison to a mother's righteous wrath," agreed the Sannin. Despite their misgivings at how difficult it would be to convince Kushina to hand over one of her children to have a demon sealed in them and her firstborn of 3 children Arashi helping her, it was surprisingly easy. Jiraiya was able to walk away with a broken nose, a cracked rib, several bruises, and a few non-lethal stab wounds from a kunai that young Arashi managed to keep on his person. Sarutobi just walked away with the elder Naruto in his arms. Jiraiya made a good shield from angry women. Riding atop Gamabunta, it didn't take long before the two reached the giant fox, with the preparations for the sealing complete. From the perspective of the onlookers, it just appeared as if that the toad boss simply hopped in front of the Kyuubi and waited a few seconds before the great demon bellowed in rage and its body disintegrated into ash. After that night the Sandaime, Yondaime, and Jiraiya were all hailed as heroes. Jiraiya for summoning Gamabunta to help and for applying the proper seals to the babe. The Yondaime for coming up with the plan and seals needed to stop the fox and for sacrificing his daughter to be the beast's host. But the Sandaime was considered the greatest for sacrificing his life to seal the Kyuubi and to allow Konoha to keep its Yondaime Hokage. A statue of the third cage when he was in his prime was made and set up in the center of Konoha's park, a place everyone visited to pay their respects to their old cage. Fortunately, nobody was saying that Akane is Kyuubi because with Kushina and her big brother Arashi, who is prodigy eagle to his same age best friend Uchiha Itachi, that would "vape" been highly suicidal. Although Akane wasn't "t" hailed as a hero, big number of villagers sneered at her when her family wasn't "t" with her and some drunk people attacked her before being captured and taken to furious Kushina. Her life was relatively better than with other Jinchurikis and there was no need to not tell younger generations. Most of shinobi families treated her like normal people and she was to becoming friends with young clan heirs. Unfortunately, nobody was seeing what was going to happen to one of Namikaze kids. But threat is not going to happen to Akane. It is closing towards her twin brother Naruto. Nobody in universe knows that this threat that certain missing nins is going to bring will change the entire world forever. Time skipped 3 years. In the office of the Hokage, Minato was busy with paperwork. Well, not that busy as he had 2 Kage Bunshin helping him. After signing the last piece of work, Minato dispelled his Kage Bunshin to retrieve their memories. The only paper they worked on that interested him was the list of active ninja in the village. Every time he saw that he could not help but be reminded of all the shinobi lost during the last war and the Kyuubi. Because of that he was forced send almost all shinobis in village to the missions all the time and he had give promotions to many ninjas who should still be in academy dreaming. They should not yet face harsh world of ninjas. One example was Kushina-S team consisting of Uchiha Itachi, Minato-S son Arashi and Azuki Yugo. Arashi couldn't be with his family as much as he wanted since because of he being prodigy with Itachi they were already Chunin while Yugo was preparing to next Chunin exams. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Minato turned to see who was visiting him. When the door fully opened it revealed to be Kushina. "Hello Kushina-chan," he said as he walked up to her and gave her a hug and kiss in greeting. Looking around he noted how Naruto and Akane were nowhere in sight. "Where are the twins? I left them at home. I got Anko-chan to watch over them," Kushina answered. Minato nodded being aware how loyal the Chunin Anko was to his family. When her sensei Orochimaru had left the village and villagers had started to resent her Kushina had taken her under her wings and place to belong. Whenever Anko couldn't get into her home in Tower middle of the Forest of Death she could come in Namikaze estates and Minato was always breaking mobs that hated Anko. She would let nothing happen to the children, but it helped to ease his mind knowing that there were two Anbu watching over the house. "So what brings you here? I thought that we could spend lunch together over at that ramen stand you like so much." Minato grinned as he went to get his cloak so they could head out, but was stopped by the appearance of one the Anbu that watched his home. His heavy breathing was unusual for a ninja of his caliber and was not a good sign. "Huff huff. Hokage-sama. Huff. It's terrible, Huff. There's been Huff. An attack on your home. Your son has been kidnapped." "What?" shouted the two parents. "How? Why didn't the Anbu stop them?" questioned Minato. "I'm sorry sir, but the enemy was actually Mitarashi Anko that Lady Kushina had assigned to watch kids. Enemy was someone in extremely powerful henge. We would vey not noticed if we hadn't heard some passing people to say that she is still sleeping in tower." Once those words were out of the Anbu's mouth, both Minato and Kushina leapt out of the tower and went as fast as they could to their home. There they found Akane bawling over the fact that her brother was gone, whom she had been rather close to. Before the day was out Minato had all available teams of Konoha hunter nins along with every available Inuzuka, Hyuga, Aburame, and any other ninja that excelled at tracking like his student Kakashi. Kushina called Arashi to come help and he surprised people coming using his father s Hiraishin which he had learned in secret. He left to searching Naruto immediately. Minato even sent word to his sensei Jiraiya to use his spy network to find the boy. Some might have thought that he was abusing his power as Hokage, using all these resources to find his son, but when Kushina heard that searches are excarated she found those people and after giving great amount voice what was in her mind all protest stopped there. Outside of Konoha, few hours after kidnapping, two ninjas were currently running along a land making a hasty escape after they scored big in accomplishing their personal mission to Konoha. They were people that sought adrenaline bursts that they get from successfully stealing high-guarded things. They had stolen objects from warlords and daimyos, but this was their first thing that was stolen from Cage of Ninja Village. Both ninjas had on a headbands that had a symbol for their ninja village which was a megacure. Both were men and wearing slim burgundy flak jackets, white pants, and carrying retractable weapons on their hips. One of the men had messy brown hair and a distinctive scar running diagonally on his face over his nose and his headband around his forehead. He shouted to his teammate, "Could you believe it, Han? We actually succeeded stealing son of Hokage." The one with headband on his neck answered, "I know it Wado. You re awesome." The two men kept running without stopping until the brown-haired man slowed down till he was directly behind his teammate opening up a pack he had on his back. He looked inside to make sure their package was intact and it was. He spoke to his teammate, "So what now Han? Shall we sell him to some person that hates namikazes like Tsuchikage? You re kidding. I don't give anything to persons whose country has treated our home country so low. You re right. Besides slave trading is much safer way to get some money. Shall we sell him to Orochimaru? He gives good price from slaves to be used in experiments." "Wait," shouted Han, "from experiments I got an idea. Why don't we sell him to Namagakure, hidden village of swamp, in swamp country? It has great need for slaves to be used in it s jutsu creation labs. That s great idea. Let's get to harbor before boy awakens." Both Wado and Han soon disappear. If they had known what Naruto would begone Namagakure's labs they would rather cutted one of their hands than taken him to there. 8 years later, Konoha. At the academy, students were just being released out of their classes and began running out quickly. One little girl named Akane came out of the building. She had long blonde hair that was tied in a long braid, whisker birthmarks on her cheeks, cerulean blue eyes, and she was wearing an orange shirt and shorts. The little girl rushed out of the door and stopped waiting for her friends to come out. She didn't wait long as 4 girls ran out of the academy building heading straight for her. One of the girls was a pink-haired, shoulder-length girl with her hair tied back with a red ribbon, emerald green eyes. She was wearing a darker shade of blue for a shirt and light tan shorts. The second girl had platinum blonde hair that was shoulder-length, blue eyes, 2 ring necklaces, a peach-colored shirt, and black pants. The third girl had blue hair and blue eyes. She was wearing 2 red clips on the left side of her face and was carrying wooden sword at her waist. Finally, the fourth girl had dark blue hair in a Heim cut style, with chin-length strands framing each side of her face. Her eyes were white, pupil-less, with a tint of lavender. Unlike the other 4 girls, she had an expensive beige color kimono. The 4 girls caught up with their blonde friend and followed her away from the school grounds. The little pink-haired girl asked her friends, "You guys want to come over to my house?" First to respond was the platinum blonde-haired girl, "Sorry Sakura, but my mother wants me to help around the shop a little more." Akane told Sakura, "Like Ino, I can't come over either. My brother is supposed to be returning from a mission today and I wanted to go see him. Unfortunately it same with me because of Itachi ni," said blue-haired Junko Uchiha, twin of Sasuke Uchiha. The last girl however told Sakura, "I'll come over. Two-san is away on a business trip with my uncle and they won't be back for some time." Sakura said, "Thanks Hinata." Ino sighed saying to them, "Man, Akane, Hinata, Junko and Sasuke-kun all have siblings. It'd be nice if I had a little sister." Akane told Ino, "It's good I guess, but bro doesn't have time to hang out. When he is home and not on missions, he goes to the Hokage training ground and does nothing but train." Hinata added, "Hanabi is still too young to really say anything yet. She's only 3 years old right now." Finally Junko said, "I have same problem with Itachi ni that Akane has and Sasuke has almost same view about women that father has." Sakura said, "Still though I agree with Ino, it would be nice to have a little brother or sister." The 5 walked and talked with each other for a while before they split up going their separate ways. Akane started running to the Hokage's tower to go see her dad and hopefully her brother Arashi would be there as well. Junko was following her in hope to meet Itachi. She made the final turn around the corner and she ran into someone. Junko avoided collision just barely and catched falling Akane. Akane fell back to Junko's arms with a grunt and quickly looked up to apologize. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going." She stopped when she realized she ran into Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke had raven black hair that spiked out in the back, black eyes, a long-sleeve blue shirt with a fan symbol on the back, and white pants. He was the youngest son of Fugaku and Makoto Uchiha. His older brother was Itachi Uchiha. It has been said around the village that both Arashi Namikaze and Itachi Uchiha were rivals ever since they graduated from the academy the same year at 7 years old. But Itachi came out on top as number 1, something her brother didn't bother to worry about. Both got promoted to Chunin at 10 years old. The only difference between the two was Itachi accepted his promotion to Anbu captain at 13, where her brother chose to go in as a Junin instead. Even after Itachi became Anbu, he always sought out Arashi to have a battle with. Itachi had dark gray eyes, and also had black hair that hung near his cheeks to frame his face. He also had the addition of a long ponytail in the back of his hair. Though his hair color appeared slightly duller and with a softer flow to it, without the spiky style at the back. His skin was also slightly darker. Itachi's most distinguishing characteristics were the long pronounced creases under his eyes. He was wearing his casual clothes, which were a black shirt, Uchiha symbol on back, and black pants. Sasuke picked himself up and shouted, "Watch where you're going." Haru stood up and stared him down, shouting back, "Big talk for a shorty like you." Anime-style lightning shot out of their eyes, connecting as the two continued to argue with one another. Junko just sighed because those two had never been able to get along. Usually she was rooting for Akane when she and Sasuke growled because Sasuke made fun of Akane's treatment and that she wasn't one of the brightest students. am making Akane little like Kishimoto s Naruto. Sasuke stopped arguing when he felt someone place a hand on his shoulder. He turned around and saw his older brother Itachi smiling at him saying, "Sasuke-kun, that's no way to talk to a friend, is it?" Sasuke looked down and Itachi looked at Haru. "Sorry for my little brother." "Where are you off to, Haru-chan?" Akane blushed a deep shade of red and stuttered, answering him, "Well, I'm going to my dad's office to see my brother." Itachi and Junko chuckled at the little girl, and they knew full well that the little girl has a crush on Itachi. Itachi asked Haru, "Mind if I join? It's been a while since I last saw Arashi." Akane was still fashioning a blush, but nodded quickly. Itachi looked at his little brother, asking him, "Oh, Junko-chan. I would like to talk with you, but mom asked you to go to her. She has something to talk for you." "Alright, Itachi ni, LL go. See ya later, Akane." She waved for her friend and started to walk towards Uchiha clan compound. "Do you want to tag along too, Sasuke-kun?" Sasuke looked at his brother, nodding meekly. The three walked to the Hokage's tower with Akane and Itachi talking the whole time. When they reached the Hokage's secretary's desk, Haru told her that she was there to see her father and they would always let her in. Akane, Itachi and Sasuke reached the Hokage's office and Haru opened the door without knocking, something her father was used to. She dashed inside and stopped as soon as she opened the door and saw her father at his desk wearing his cloak that she's almost always seen him in. Her eyes glanced to the only other in the room, who had long, wild, spiky blonde hair with some of it kept in a low ponytail. He was wearing the traditional ninja vest and the blue ninja clothes. Akane immediately ran to him shouting, "Arashi Onichan, you're home." She grabbed onto his leg and hugged him tight. Minato laughed at the scene in front of him. Arashi kneeled down to look his sister in the eyes and said, "It's good to see you, aka Haim." Akane laughed. Every time she saw him he'd call her that. Arashi looked up and saw Itachi and Sasuke walk into the room. He greeted all of them first. "Hello there, Itachi-san, Sasuke." Minato also greeted them the same way. Itachi bowed to them saying, "Good evening, Arashi-san, Hokage-sama." Sasuke mimicked his brother, but not very pleasant way, and greeted both Minato and Arashi the same way. Minato said to his daughter and Sasuke, "Akane sweetie, do you mind taking Sasuke out into the lobby and wait out there for a moment? Daddy has to talk with Arashi for a moment." Akane was about to pout, but Arashi said to her, "Don't worry, Aniki will be here when you get back." Akane sadly agreed and walked out of the room. Itachi nudged Sasuke for him to follow her, and like Akane, Sasuke walked out wanting to hang out with his brother longer and not wanting to socialize with Akane. Itachi closed the door after they left and walked over to his rival and stood next to him. Minato went over his son's mission report that he has a tendency to do on his way home from his mission. He leaned back in his chair after reading his son's report and said, "Another lead that turned out to be a dead end." Arashi looked down, apologizing, "I thought that this would be the one too, but it turns out the kid everyone saw was wrong one." "Sorry, Dad." Minato immediately said to his son, "Don't apologize for this." They didn't mind talking about this in front of Itachi, since this kind of information was common. When Naruto was kidnapped, it became aware to everyone in Konoha. When Itachi finished his missions early, he would ask around looking for the Namikaze's missing child. Minato put the paperwork in his desk and told his son, "We're getting close though, I feel it. For now though, go home and get some rest. Tell your mother I'll be home later and that I don't have to work late tonight." Arashi politely bowed to his father and took his leave. Itachi bowed to Minato and took his leave as well. Itachi walked side by side with his rival, asking, 8 years huh? Arashi nodded, "Yeah, 8 years since my baby brother was kidnapped from home. My mother blames herself from not noticing that Anko was fake one." Itachi didn't really know what to do to really comfort someone, so the only thing he could say was, "Don't worry, Arashi, you'll find him." Arashi didn't feel any better and went to fetch his sister so they could head home. Hokage Mansion. Akane burst through the cage mansion, heading straight for the kitchen, followed by her brother. Akane reached the kitchen and saw her mother chopping up some vegetables for dinner. "Hi mom," said an excited Akane. Kushina turned around and saw her daughter. Putting the knife down, she kneeled down to give her daughter a hug. "How was your classes today?" Akane gave her mother a great big smile, telling her, "I did great. Our teacher is Iruka Amino is teaching us what to look for in the field to eat when we run out of supplies." Pretty much what to eat and what not to eat. Kushina said, "That's great, I can't believe you're already at the academy and before long you'll be a ninja of Konoha just like your brother." Akane blushed and smiled that her mother said that. Arashi sat down at the kitchen table teasing his little sister. "That's the second time you blushed today, isn't it, Akaneheim?" Akane turned to look at her brother shouting, "Nah." Arashi said, "So Itachi was lying when he saw you blush earlier." Kushina started to laugh that her daughter already had a crush and it was the future clan head of the Uchihas. Kushina told her daughter, "Akane-chan, why don't you go upstairs and go wash up?" Akane didn't argue and darted off up to her room, leaving Kushina and her oldest child. Arashi knew what was coming. Every time he went on a mission that had to do with Naruto, she just needed to know. Kushina sat down at the table next to her son, no longer carrying her smile, asking him, "What did you find?" Arashi tapped his fingers on the table while telling his mother, "Nothing. Turns out whoever that village saw who resembled Naruto was wrong one." He hated to give his mother bad news, but it was better than getting her hopes too high up. Arashi got up to leave, but told his mom, "I'm gonna find him. I'm not gonna stop till I find him." He started to walk away saying one last thing. Dad doesn't have to work late tonight and he said he'll be home when he can. Kushina watched him leave. Over the years she keeps the thought that Naruto is alive and well somewhere out there. That thought kept her from doing anything drastic and life-risking. She got up from the table and continued making dinner for her family, occasionally looking out of the kitchen window watching the sunset. Next morning, Minato was taking a stroll through the village with his wife Kushina hanging on his arm. They usually take walks like this together in the mornings just so they could get out. Akane was at the academy and Arashi was out and about meeting up with his old teammates even though he didn't know them long enough. They walked around until Kushina said, "I'm a little hungry, how about we eat at Ichiraku's?" Minato wasn't one to argue when it came to her and ramen. "Okay, let's get some ramen." He agreed and led her to the ramen bar. It was a small shack restaurant with only 6 bar stools. Kushina moved the curtains out of the way, allowing her and Minato to walk through. Kushina greeted the owner, "Hello Tucci-san." An old man in his early 40s looked up from making ramen and saw Kushina and Minato. "Oh, hello there, Kushina-sama, Hokage-sama." Kushina giggled, telling him, "I told you already, Tucci-san. Just call me Kushina, you don't need the sama." Minato said to the old restaurant owner she wanted ramen again. "So let's just have the usual salt ramen and I'll just have the beef ramen." Tucci smiled and said, "Coming right up." Kushina looked around and asked, "Where's Ayame at?" Tucci talked while making the ramen. "Oh, I sent her to the market to get some more ingredients and other groceries. I just sent her out so she'll be gone for a while." After a while the ramen was done and he served it to his 2 customers. Both Kushina and Minato said in unison, "Itadakimasu," and they both dug in. As they ate they noticed someone else enter the restaurant. Minato greeted him first, "Hey there, Kakashi." Kakashi was wearing the standard Junin outfit instead of his Enbu armor. "Hello sensei, Kushina-san." Kushina also greeted Kakashi, "Good morning, Kakashi. How have you been?" Kakashi shrugged his shoulders, "I've been okay. I saw you and sensei here and thought I'd drop in to say hi." "That's nice of you, Kakashi," said Minato. The 3 got caught up talking about things that have happened recently, including Haru's advancement in her classes, but her only trouble was she can't get the clone technique down. Tucci walked in the back to put some things away, leaving the 3 to talk. Kushina finished her ramen then just sat there looking at her empty bowl. Minato looked over at her and saw her saddened face, asking, "What's wrong?" Kushina sighed, asking, "Do you think Naruto would have liked ramen?" Minato smiled, saying, "I'm sure he would. After all, you, Arashi and Akane would kill someone for some ramen." Kakashi also added, "He's probably out there right now having himself a bowl of some ramen as we speak." Kushina brightened up and said, "Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go back home and clean up a little." Minato stood up, setting the money for their meal on the counter, saying to Kakashi, "I'll see you later, Kakashi." Kakashi made a head nod to his sensei and watched the couple leave. Minato decided to walk his wife home before he went back to his office. Hokage Tower. After some hours, Minato was working in his office talking to his sensei Jiraiya while he was working. Jiraiya was off in the corner with a typewriter on a roll with his new story of Icha Icha novels. Minato was still going through his daily routine of approving and denying important documents, going through the new squads for the newest graduates, picking the squad leaders and going through mission assignments. Jiraiya was snickering after completing another chapter. Hey Minato, I'm on a roll over here. Yet another masterpiece of the great Jiraiya. Minato smiled saying, yeah, and all it cost you were 2 broken ribs, a few bruises, some lacerations, and fractured skull from the women at the bathhouse. Jiraiya told his student, it's all for the sake of my readers who are the hardworking citizens, to loyal ninjas all around the nations, and even the daimyos. So you can see that I have a lot of responsibility. Minato rolled his eyes and continued with his work, and Jiraiya did the same. The 2 men worked in silence for a few hours before there came a knock at his door. Minato looked up from his work and called out, enter. The door opened up to reveal his secretary holding a document, handing it over to him. Hokage-sama, this is a report from the land of Swamp and mission request to gather information from the member of Fire Daimyo S Council. Minato took the document and said, thanks. His secretary bowed to him and took her leave. Report was about whereabouts of Blood Drinker of Swamp, Uruki Hoshino, S-class missing nin. He was once son of Numakagore S leader Ogi Hoshino, but he was exiled from his village after the rebellion in the Numa no Kuni, land of Swamp, for hurting his teammate Tamagi Hattori. When he was brought back to be executed from treason, he escaped from his holds and killed everyone in entire village. He killed his teammates, sensei, parents, 2 siblings, ninjas, civilians, women and all children. He killed absolutely everybody in the village. After that he changed from what he looked like, killed brutally every human he felt to kill when they made contact with him, and caned his nickname when eyewitness told he actually drank the blood of his victims. Reports told he was now in valley between large mountains of Numa no Kuni, where he is said to build Western-style castle. Getting there was so difficult and dangerous that infiltrating there was considered S-rank mission. For there he gathered large group of not-so-saint-like people, sent them to collect large amounts of dead bodies, and controlled surrounding mountain villages with fear. Nobody knew and didn't he want to know what he did there with his people. Minato sighed for report that he set aside and picked mission document. News about Numa S massacre were especially shocking for Konoha because one of founders of this village Hattori clan were distant cousins of Uchihas like Uzumaki's were for Senju. Hattori S dojutsu was mutation of Sharingan called Copycat Eye, which couldn't predict movements, but could copy even some lesser bloodline jutsus. Tamagi Hattori and his nephew 11-year-old Boichiro Hattori were only survivors of this clan when plague struck there. Now Boichiro, who works as genin of Kusagakure, Hidden Grass Village, because of alliance between 2 villages, was only one who could revive copycat bloodline. Minato looked over the mission document and after few minutes said, I think I'll send Arashi on this information gathering mission so he could be happy with finding more information on Naruto. Jiraiya sighed, saying to his student, it's been 8 years now, Minato. I know that you and the rest of your family believe that he's alive, but in this world and in these times it's highly unlikely. Like with that whole Kumogakure situation last year, ninjas will do whatever it takes to get the edge on others, by any means. With the Hyuga's heiress they would probably use her to breed stronger ninjas, and with Naruto they might have had an idea in their head that they could have an army of flash ninjas. Minato looked at his sensei with unease, but Jiraiya continued. Look, I know you don't like the idea of something bad happening to Naruto, but that's just how this world is. Especially with if it is Iwa, then it's even less likely since Iwa's economy is on the low and they would be in a desperate situation to kidnap him. Minato leaned back in his chair and pulled out from his desk a book and tossed it lightly to his sensei. Jiraiya caught the book, he looked at it and then placed it off to the side. Minato told him, I named my son after the character in that book because I believed that Naruto would grow up to be just like the protagonist in that book. I wanted to be able to see him actually grow to be like that, but 8 years ago, as you know, made it impossible. Now my family won't give up until he is back home where he belongs. Everyone else might have given up after this long, but not us. I refuse to believe that my son dead, and my family refuses that as well. Jiraiya stood up and unrolled a seal with writings already on it and sealed his typewriter inside of it. He put the scroll away and put on his sandals, telling the man before him, well, I'll be back. Jiraiya opened the window and said, I'm gonna go on a scouting mission to look for an 8-year-old who went missing. I'll let you know what I find. See ya, Gaki. Jiraiya jumped out the window to the ground below. Minato smiled, saying to himself, thank you, sensei. Hokage Mansion. Kushina, Akane and Akane's friends from the academy were sitting down watching a sparring match between Arashi and Itachi. Haru's friends from school consisted of Hinata Hyuga, Sakura Haruno, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, Shino Aburame, Junko Uchiha, Kiba Inuzuka, and Kiba's puppy he got named Akamaru. All were watching the fight at the Hokage's training ground and were eager to see the fight between the two. Kushina thought it was a bit strange that Itachi would be the one to seek out her son to fight instead of the other way around. Arashi considered himself a normal everyday ninja, but Itachi was known as the strongest Uchiha and a genius among his peers. Itachi though kept seeking out Arashi and always wanted to fight him. Itachi rarely challenges other ninjas and Arashi doesn't challenge others at all. Arashi and Itachi were keeping their fight a pure taijutsu match and didn't want to risk using weapons or jutsu since a stray attack could harm the kids. Itachi had his Sharingan activated and Arashi had nothing but his pure speed on his side. Itachi tried to punch Arashi, but he knocked Itachi's fist away and he punched back at Itachi. The two kept countering the other's moves and it seemed the fight would be at a standstill. Both teams stopped however when they sensed someone enter. They looked over to where Kushina was and saw two Anbu ninjas bowing down to her. Kushina noticed them as well, asking in a cheery tone, "Hello, is there something you need?" One of the Anbu was a woman with purple hair and a cat mask while the other had on a tiger mask and he had spiky brown hair. The tiger mask Anbu said, "Kushina-sama, the Hokage needs to speak with Arashi-sama immediately concerning a mission." Kushina looked from the two Anbu to her son and waved him over. Arashi used his speed and appeared right next to his mother in a blink of an eye. Arashi asked, "My father sends for me?" Both the Anbu were still bowing and nodded their heads. Arashi reached over and grabbed a towel to wipe the sweat off of his neck. "Alright, let me get into my gear and I'll head up there as soon as I'm ready." Both the Anbu nodded again and blurred out of the area. Akane stood up and asked, "You're leaving already? You just got home barely 2 hours ago." Akane began to pout. Arashi shook his head and kneeled down to his sister's level saying, "Look, Aniki is a ninja of Konoha now. I will always be called away on missions for weeks at a time, maybe even a month. This is something Aniki needs to do." Kushina kept smiling, telling her daughter, "Besides, you'll have to do the same thing when you graduate from the academy and become a ninja like your Aniki." Akane looked at her mom to her brother saying, "Okay." Arashi patted her head and told everyone, "I'll try and get this mission over with quickly so I'll be back to see if I maybe made a Junin sensei this year." Kushina said to her son, "Don't keep your hopes up." Itachi walked over to Arashi asking, "Mind if we pick up where we left off when you return?" Arashi rubbed the back of his head, Yeah, I guess if there's time." Itachi told his friend, "Good luck on your mission." Arashi gave Itachi a thumbs up and jolted to his room to get set up. Kushina stood up from her spot asking the kids, "Okay, how about I make you guys lunch?" Choji stood up first shouting, "Food." Ino hit him in the back of his head scolding him, "Be more respectful." Hinata bowed to Kushina saying, "Thank you for letting me eat here." Kushina hugged Hinata saying, "Oh, you're so cute when you're polite." Haru said to her friends, "Come on guys, let's go wait in the living room till mom finishes cooking." The rest of the kids nodded and ran inside following after Haru. Junko started to run, but noticed his brother was putting on his sandals and was about to leave. "Aniki, are you leaving?" Itachi looked at his sister and said, "Yes Junko-chan, I am. Have fun with your friends, there is something I need to do." Itachi made a hand motion with his hand for Junko to go. Junko saw his brother walk back into the Hokage's training ground before jumping over the huge wall separating the training ground from the rest of the area around them. Kushina watched the whole interaction and kept on smiling saying to Junko, "Junko-chan, are you gonna stay?" Junko looked at Kushina and said, "Hi." She ran past her and into the living room where the rest of the kids were at. Kushina then went into the kitchen to prepare lunch for the kids. An hour before dark. Konoha, Hokage Tower. Minato was just finishing mission meeting. He smiled and told all of them, "Good, you all leave in an hour. Team Kakashi will meet at the West Gate and Team Anko will meet at the South Gate. If either one of you completes your mission first, I want you to rendezvous with the other squad and exchange info by going to where the other squad is." Minato rolled out a map and pointed a line from Meadows to the town Kuban saying, "Make sure to take this path so in the case that you run into each other." Now you are all dismissed. The 8 ninjas bowed and then left the room to get packed up for their missions. Kushina moved from the couch that was off to the side of the room to standing behind her husband, hugging him with her chin resting on his shoulder, saying, "You're doing an excellent job as Cage. Sarutobi would be proud of the job you're doing." Minato leaned his head back and kissed Kushina on her cheek the best he could, saying, "Thanks for saying that." There was a knock at his door and he immediately called out, "Come in please." The door opened up, revealing his secretary. She walked over to his desk and gave a polite bow to both the Namikazes, saying, "The backup squads you've requested are on the waiting list as per your orders. Asuma Sarutobi, Kurenai Yuhi, Might Guy, and Ebisu Tobita are all awaiting your approval to go on the mission, as well as the 6 Anbu ninjas you've requested." Minato thanked her. Kushina saw that the woman looked a little unsure about something and she asked her, "Is there anything else?" The woman looked up and at Kushina and pulled out a slip of paper and handed it to her, saying, "This came from Tsunade-sama today." Kushina took the paper and read through it. After she was done reading it, she asked the secretary to leave. The sec bowed and politely left the room. Minato looked at Kushina and saw the saddened look in her eyes and asked, "You okay?" Kushina crumbled up the piece of paper and threw it away, saying, "That woman. I'll never understand her. She doesn't try and contact me for 2 years and then she finally sends me a letter now. When I needed her support the most, she ended up running off with Shizune." Minato pulled her into his lap and started stroking her hair, trying to comfort her. "She just wants to make amends. If not for herself, then she is probably trying for Shizune. I don't think Tsunade would want to come home if she knew that you hated her. The only people in this world who still mean anything to her are you, Shizune, and Jiraiya, and I don't think she could stand it if any of you 3 hated her." Kushina buried her face more into his chest and kept mumbling something, which only caused Minato to chuckle as he thought, "She is more like a child, but I still love her." The happy moment was interrupted when Minato said, "Someone is here." Kushina got up from his lap and looked at the window and saw Itachi standing there with his Anbu attire on. Minato stood up from his chair and walked over to the window, opening it, allowing him to enter. Itachi bowed and said, "I apologize, Hokage-sama, for interrupting you in this fashion." Minato shrugged it off and asked, "It's no problem, Itachi-san. What do you got?" Itachi stood up and said, "The Uchiha clan men are planning a coup." Day later, Konoha. Minato had gone through a few files with dread filling how his day was turning out and the surprising information Itachi brought to his attention. Right now he was talking to his son, who had just returned from mission and was in front of him. "Arashi, I'm giving you some leave for at least a month so you could relax." Arashi was about to argue, but Dad. Minato cut him off, saying, "This is an order as your Cage, not your father. It's not forever, just for a month. It will do you some good. Also, you could start after I tell you of a request a fellow nin asked of me." Kushina broke away from her son and walked over to where the couch was and sat quietly. Arashi was a bit confused and asked his father, "What kind of request?" The young Hokage pressed a button on his intercom, allowing to connect with his secretary. "Send him in, please." 2 minutes later the door opened up, revealing Itachi donning his Anbu uniform except for his mask. Itachi walked over till he was side by side with his rival, looking at the Hokage. Minato made the ox hand sign, allowing a seal to appear on the ground, ceiling, walls, and windows of his office. After that was done, he addressed them. "This room is soundproof and has genjutsu casted on the windows so no one can see in to read our lips." Arashi could now tell that his father was dead serious by the look in his eyes. Minato asked Itachi, "Itachi-san, could you fill my son in on what you told me?" More of a statement than a request. Itachi, however, agreed, and he turned to Arashi, telling him, "Recently my clan have been acting a little suspicious. Though difficult to explain, I found out that my father Fugaku Uchiha is planning a coup." Needless to say, Arashi was stunned. "I brought this information to your father and the council, along with some evidence that can back up my statements. Few women in mine siblings, only children in clan, doesn't T know because they don't T think they would go with their plans. Mother knows and is saying for father that she supports, but in reality she is helping me to provide information. When the coup will occur I do not know, but I know that it will be soon and that we must act." Minato cut in, saying, "Arashi, the Shinobi Council came to a vote when this information was brought to us. We cannot publicly come out to Fugaku letting him know that we know of his plans. If we did, then he could become desperate in his situation and attack. Fugaku apparently recently informed Itachi in on the coup, but as Itachi said, he doesn't know when it will occur. Itachi also said that he tried to talk his father out of it, but Fugaku wouldn't hear him out, so negotiations are out as well. 3 elders came with idea that is horrible, but sadly is our only choice. Minato pulled out a scroll and placed it on his desk, rolling it on its side till it reached his son. Arashi picked up the scroll and he heard his father say, "Within that scroll, son, is a modified flak jacket with numerous tri-pronged kunais with the Hiraishin no Jutsu formula on them already. Arashi, Sai, you and Itachi are to go into the Uchiha compound and kill off every one of the Uchiha clansmen, and by everyone I mean everyone except Makoto. Women that doesn't T know about this, and Junko and Sasuke. Everyone else must be killed." Arashi looked over to Itachi and he saw that he was still stoic as ever. No emotion was being shown on his face. Minato, however, asked Itachi, "Itachi, is there any way you can get your siblings and Makoto out of your compound ahead of time? Like if I have Akane ask them to stay the night over at the Hokage's mansion." Itachi thought about it and simply agreed, "I can try." Kushina butted in saying, "I can have Akane invite her friends over for a sleepover, that way it's guaranteed that Junko and Sasuke will come over if her friends are there. I can also ask Makoto out for women s night out." The 3 ninjas in the room agreed that that was a good idea. Minato said to both Itachi and Arashi, "Prepare yourselves. You attack tomorrow night once the district surrounding the Uchiha compound has gone dark. Anbu will be set up around the perimeter to keep any Uchihas from escaping. I've already had Hiashi send over his clansmen to scope out underground escape routes. No one gets out. Am I understood?" Both men said in unison, "Hi." Minato was happy with the answer and said, "Now I want to know what you will do now, Itachi." Itachi rose his eyebrow asking, "Beg your pardon?" Minato asked, "I mean, what will you do after the Uchiha clan have been killed?" Arashi and Kushina stared at Itachi wondering what his answer will be. It took him a while, but he answered truthfully, "I will rebuild. I will rebuild the Uchiha clan to its once former glory. I couldn't stand by and watch as my clan were planning on killing many in order to control the village. I just couldn't." Itachi looked over at Arashi saying, "I can't do this alone, Arashi. Just few days ago I had to kill Shisui, person I considered as my brother, because he wanted so that village wouldn't fight for the sake of his eyes, and now this happens. I needed help from someone who is on the same level as me and can hold his own. That is why I requested that the Hokage allow you to join me on this. I don't mind helping a friend in need, Itachi," said Arashi. Itachi gave his rival a simple smile and then held his hand out for Arashi to shake his hand. Arashi reached his hand out and they both shook one another's hand. Minato told the two, "Well, head out and relax till tomorrow." Kushina told Itachi, "Don't worry, I'll make sure Makoto and kids gets their invitation." Itachi accepted that and thanked her. Minato yawned and looked at the time saying, "Well, we have a lot to do. I'm gonna lock up early and I suggest that you two get some rest." Again both ninjas agreed and Itachi was the first to leave. Minato dropped the seals around his office and he took his leave with Kushina and Arashi, preparing for the upcoming trouble. Morning. Konoha. Hokage Mansion. Akane was sleeping peacefully in her bed when she felt someone kiss her on her cheek. She sat up, rubbing her eyes to wake herself up. Looking to whoever kissed her, she saw her mother sitting on her bed with a warming smile. Akane smiled as well, saying, "Good morning, Ka-san." Kushina again leaned down and kissed her on her forehead, this time saying to her daughter, "Good morning to you too, aka Chan." Haru slid off of her bed to look in her mirror. Her long blonde hair was not in a braid yet. It was usually her mother who put her hair in the braid, although she did learn to braid her hair herself. Kushina pulled a chair that was in her daughter's room and sat behind her daughter and began to braid her hair slowly. Akane asked her mother, "Ka-san, do you think it would be okay if I stayed the night at Hinata-chan's?" Kushina told her daughter, "Wouldn't it be funner if we ask Hinata-chan, Sakura-chan, Ino-chan, Junko-chan and a few of your other friends over to have a sleepover here?" Akane's eyes lit up and she asked, "Really? Ka-san, I'd like that a lot." Kushina smiled wider and said, "Okay, then let's me and you go to your friends' houses and we'll send an invite. I am going tonight for women s night out with Makoto-chan, so could Sasuke also come for here?" For that Akane protested, but her mother made her give up with some arguments. Kushina almost always got what she wanted when she had decided to get it no matter what. How about we have them come over at lunchtime? Akane agreed with that and let her mother finish braiding her hair. She couldn't wait to have a sleepover with all her friends. As soon as she was done, Akane tossed off her nightgown. Running to her closet, she quickly put on an orange shirt with 2 vertical blue lines and a pair of blue shorts. Kushina said, "Oh, aren't you excited?" Akane grabbed her mother's hand and said, "Come on Ka-san, let's go." When they walked out into the hallway, Akane made one quick stop to her brother's room. She pushed the door open and stood in the doorway saying, "Hey bro, guess what? I'm having a sleepover. That's when all your friends come over and you play games, stay up late, and do all other fun things." Kushina walked into the room next, looking around the room and continued listening to her daughter. Akane happily said, "Next, when you come back I'll have the biggest sleepover just for you, brother. Just you wait, Naruto." The room they were in was a room with blue wallpaper and a red swirl on the ceiling, a neatly made kid-size bed, an empty dresser, and a toy box with a few toys in it. Kushina looked at the door and it had a plaque on it that had "Naruto's room" written on it. Kushina patted her daughter's head and said, "Come on aka-chan." Akane smiled and said one last thing before she left, "Don't worry brother, Aniki will bring you home and we'll have all kinds of fun." Akane let one tear fall from her eye and she wiped it away and grabbed her mother to drag her out of the room. Kushina turned around to close the door, but paused when she saw that at the foot of the bed was a little messed up, as if someone was just sitting in it. She already knew who it was and she shut the door and followed her daughter downstairs. In the dining room was Arashi eating some pancakes he made himself while reading a magazine about dogs. He stopped reading for a moment when he heard someone running and he turned his head and saw Akane run up to him happily shouting, "Aniki! Ka-san is taking me to my friends' houses so I can invite them for a sleepover. Isn't that cool?" Arashi smiled and said, "Well, that's cool. I'm sure you don't want your big brother there to embarrass you, right?" Akane nodded and said, "Yeah, that's right. You always embarrass me, so you can say hi, but then you have to go to your room and not bug us." Arashi simply smiled and said, "Will do." Kushina made it downstairs, but Akane ran past her to put her sandals on. Kushina took a moment and asked Arashi, "Was your father in Naruto's room?" Arashi turned to look at his mother and answered, "Huh? Oh yeah, he was. I saw him this morning before he left for the office. I saw Naruto's door open and I saw him sitting on Naruto's bed." She simply sighed and said, "Thought so." Akane was in Naruto's room talking to him again. Arashi said to his mother, "Yeah, she's hoping that wherever he is that he can hear her. Oh, by the way, Itachi is going to come by here later tonight before we head out. Sasuke is not to know." Kushina nodded and said, "Of course, or did you forget that your mother was a Junin before she became a devoted housewife and mother?" Arashi chuckled and said, "No, I didn't forget, Ka-san. Have fun." Kushina soon walked out of the house and saw her daughter waiting by the front gate. Akane ran over and grabbed her mother's hand and led her to the first house, unaware of what was going to occur that night. 11 o'clock. Konoha, Hokage Mansion. Akane was in the family living room along with all her friends, Hinata, Ino, Sakura, Kiba, Shikamaru, Choji, Junko and Shino. They were all playing games with the exception of Shino and Sasuke, who sat off to the side watching them. Kushina was in the other room talking with Itachi and her son, who were about to head out. Arashi told his mother, "Okay, so Konoha will lose a major strength, but avoids destructive civil war like one in Numa no Kuni." Both Itachi and Arashi were wearing Anbu ninja outfits. Itachi cold-heartedly said, "It's a sacrifice that must be made. The Uchiha clan must not succeed or else this could turn into a civil war and other nations might move in during the commotion. The sacrifice of one family to save the hundreds we have in Konoha is well worth it." Kushina asked Itachi, "How will Sasuke and Junko-chan take it?" Itachi told her simply, "He has no choice but to accept what has happened. If he hates me for doing this, then I can accept that, but this is the world we live in, not everyone gets happy ending." Arashi looked over at the clock in the room and stood up, telling his mother, "It's close to the time, we have to go meet Dad at the Uchiha compound." Kushina stood up too and gave her son a good luck kiss on his cheek. "Be careful out there, Arashi-kun. I don't know what I'd do if I lost you too." Arashi gave her reassurance and said, "I'll be fine, Mom, don't worry." Kushina also looked to Itachi and gave him a light kiss on the cheek and said, "You be careful out there too, despite what Sasuke and Junko-chan may think afterward, they will need you." Itachi simply gave her an understanding nod, and then the two ninjas walked to where the kids were to say goodbye for the night. Akane saw her brother in Anbu armor, and Itachi was wearing his as well. She ran over to her brother asking, "Where are you going, Naniki?" Arashi kneeled down and placed his hand on the top of her head, giving her a smile. "Naniki has to go with Itachi for some late night training. I'll see all of you in the morning, so don't worry." Akane only could nod understanding. Junko walked over to his big brother too and asked him, "You promise that you'll be back in the morning?" Itachi kept his usual gaze and told his little sister, "Yes, Junko-chan. We should go now, Arashi, before we are late." Arashi agreed and he looked to Sasuke saying, "I'll see y'all later, Sasuke-kun." He stood up and told the rest of Akane's friends, "Okay guys, have fun." All of the kids told him okay, and they watched the two leave out the front door. Itachi and Arashi stood outside the front door for a moment before grabbing their Anbu masks that were strapped to their backs and put them on. Itachi's was a weasel mask and Arashi's was toad mask. After putting on their masks, they jumped off to where Minato was waiting for them. Kushina meanwhile was inside getting all the kids to set up their sleeping bags in the living room and to go upstairs meet Makoto, who had come with Junko and Sasuke. The kids set up their sleeping beds and slowly went upstairs with their toothbrushes in hand. This was really the first time the kids were allowed upstairs in the Hokage's house, since they were told by their parents that they shouldn't joke or disturb the Hokage's home and should be respectful. As they went upstairs, Choji saw a door that had a plaque on it and he then read it out loud, "Naruto's room." "Hey Akane-chan, who's Naruto?" All the kids stopped and looked to where Choji was looking, and they saw the room and wondered the same thing. Hinata asked her, "Is the Hokage and your Ka-san expecting a baby?" All of the kids had their attention to Akane, who was staring intently on the door, but found her voice and answered, "Nah, that was my twin brother's room." Kiba asked her, "I didn't know you had a twin. What happened to him?" Ino elbowed him in the side and said, "You had to be brain dead." Kiba looked at Akane, who looked a little sad and understood that it was a sensitive subject. Junko spoke up after the silence, "Anyways guys, let's go brush our teeth like Kushina-sama told us to." Everyone agreed and headed to the bathroom. Shikamaru and Hinata stopped and noticed that Akane didn't move yet. Shikamaru asked her, "Oi aka-chan, you okay?" Akane finally snapped out of her trance and said, happily putting up a fake smile, "Hi, I'm okay." The little girl ran to the bathroom, avoiding both Shikamaru and Hinata's worried looks. Hinata said to Shikamaru, "Do you think she'll be okay?" Shikamaru shrugged his shoulders, "I dunno, but she's tough, nothing we should really worry about." Hinata accepted that answer and the two walked to the bathroom to brush their teeth to get ready for bed. 12 o'clock. Uchiha compound. Itachi and Arashi were leaping house to house quietly to where they were told to rendezvous with Minato. The two came to a stop when they saw him standing on a house looking into the direction of the Uchiha compound, and they landed behind him bowing on one knee. Minato saw them and said, "Good, you're both here. Here is the situation. I alerted all the clans that there was going to be a kind of drill and that I ordered all clans to remain indoors until morning. I posted Anbu in the perimeter around the Uchiha compound with my tri-pronged kunai in case any try to escape. There are also Hyugas posted along with them in case they try and hide in the bunkers underground. Keep your radios on the channel 3. All females who are not to be killed are sent to for their friend *s houses. We will say that some enemy assassin broke here to kill all the Uchihas. Understood?" Arashi and Itachi didn't speak, only nodding. Minato exclaimed, "Good, now it's all you two. Good luck." Arashi pulled out a scroll and unsealed its content, which was the modified flak jacket with the numerous kunais. He strapped on the jacket and he disappeared along with Itachi. Minato watched their movement and an Anbu appeared out of the shadow saying, "Hokage-sama, the perimeter is complete." Minato said, "Good, thank you Ferret. Return to your post and remember to use my jutsu in case you can't handle the situation." The Anbu nin bowed and then disappeared back into the shadows. Minato sighed, "It's time." Minato waited 10 minutes and that's when he heard it, screams of terror and battle cries. Even though they were about to betray Konoha, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache hearing the screams and then suddenly disappearing, knowing that their lives were ended. He had no choice but to shut off his emotions at that point and was forced to stand there and listen to all the voices that disappeared into the night. 2 years later, Konoha. Akane made it to the front door and put on her black ninja sandals and ran out the door. Her first stop was to Hinata's since her family's compound was closer to the Hokage mansion. She wasn't afraid to walk around town by herself as long as she stayed away from the industrial district, weapons district, and the old Uchiha compound. Akane stopped in her tracks and thought, Junko-chan is only one besides me who thinks there is something fishy in that incident, and Sasuke hasn't been the same since then. She shook her head free of those ideas, shouting, why should I care about that baka? I think it's because he might be your brother-in-law one of these days. Akane looked up into the tree behind her and saw her father sitting in it looking at her. Minato jumped down and picked his daughter up against her will, and she shouted, what does that mean, Dad? Minato laughed and said, so your mother let you out, huh? And what I mean by that is that it's no secret that you like Itachi. Akane immediately slammed her hands over her father's mouth to silence him, because a few people walked by giving sincere hellos to the two. Minato waved back with his mouth still covered by he was still smiling underneath it. Once they left, Akane removed her hands, shouting at her father, Dad. A few people may know, but I don't want the whole village to know. Minato giggled and said, okay, I'm sorry. So I'm where you off to on a day like this? His daughter hopped out of his arms, putting her hands on her hips. I'm going to Hinata-chan's house so I can pick her up and so we can go get Junko, Ino and Sakura as well to come over and hang out back home. Minato made an "oh" expression, but Akane pointed a finger at her father, asking, and I thought you were at the tower, Dad. What are you doing out of your office? Minato told his daughter, I am in the office. Well, my cage bunshin is anyway. I needed to get out of that stuffy office and away from all those documents. Akane scolded, Dad, you know Mom would be mad if she found out that you used a cage bunshin in the office again after that one time. By that way, why does she get mad? Minato rubbed the back of his head, remembering it all too well. He left his office one day to do a usual stroll around the village and left a clone in his office to finish up some documents. However, Kushina had came by to visit her husband and an intense makeout session was in progress, but Kushina had accidentally knocked the clone out of the chair, making it hit its head on the ground, dispelling it. Needless to say, she was pissed that it wasn't her husband, and since then he wasn't allowed to do that ever again. The young Cage asked his daughter, never mind that, but don't tell Mom that you saw me out of the office, okay? At that moment Akane had a little glint in her eyes, and he knew that all too well. If it was one thing his daughter was known for, it was how she can turn tables on people and how she could get people to do things for her. She immediately spoke in a superior tone. Oh well, Dad, I guess I could do that, but what would I get in return? I mean, if Mom would be angry with you, then I should get something out of this. Minato had a sweat drop form on his head as he tried, now listen, young lady, I control your allowance. Akane though wasn't fazed as she said, true, Dad, but Mom might give me a bigger allowance if I tell her that you left a bunshin in the office while you took a stroll into the village without her. Now how can we resolve this? Minato sunk in and knew that she had him. He hung his head in defeat, asking, okay, what do you want? Akane leapt up and hugged her dad, asking, well, I want you to convince Mom to let me have to go without surveillance during coming autumn festival tomorrow. Minato also remembered this one. One day Akane went over to Ino's and didn't tell anyone, so Kushina was all worried and depressed, and when the little girl returned, Kushina might has well been a demon. Akane was immediately grounded and she was not permitted to go anywhere during festivals and other occasions. Minato sighed as his daughter kept her hug on his waist. You are just determined to get me sent into the lion's den, aren't you? Akane simply smiled and nodded happily. Minato sighed and said, you're an evil child, but I got no choice. Akane climbed up to her father's face and planted a kiss on his cheek, saying, for good luck. Later, Dad. She immediately took off for Hinata's home. He stood there for a moment and looked in the direction of his home and imagined seeing an evil aura emanating from his house with a sign that screamed, death. He turned back around and thought to himself, maybe I'll do that later. He put his hands together and disappeared in a swirl of leaves back to his office. Tomorrow evening. Konoha during autumn festival. After twisting Minato like he was doll, Kushina had allowed Akane to go festival with her friends. They had separated because they wanted to see different things, and Akane was with Junko and Hinata in their casual clothing. They had started to walk away from the festival during their talking. Same time. not far from girls. Because of festival, many foreigners were allowed to come in village. One of them was tall teenaged boy who had brown, dirty rag, blue pants and black shinobi sandals. He sniffed for air and thought, so information was right. Something closely related to me is here. Then he started to walk towards three girls. With Akane. Girls were talking about casual girl south things in street that had no other person. Suddenly they heard somebody and looked to see girl of their age who s most distinguishing feature is her bright red hair combed down, blue eyes and clothes of different shades of red. Girls recognized her as Kallen Kurokushi, younger half-sister of Sora Kurokushi, who both were from their class. They were childs of one of 12 ninja guardians Kazuma and were brought to village by Sandame s only living son Jonin Sarutobi Asuma. When Kyuubi attacked, it leaked huge amounts Yuki, demonic chakra, in air and Jiraiya sealed it in young Sora. Because he didn't contain the Kyuubi itself, but its Yuki, civilians started to treat him as someone who was destined to be great warrior with great power. Since he was also adopted member Sandame s greatly respected Sarutobi clan, he was treated with unfair treatment that was also given for brooding, one of the last living Uchiha male, Sasuke Uchiha. For civilian and dumper ninja, they were like sons of Kami in everything from clothes to easy questions that caved them great grades were given for them in silverplate. Some Junin has already taught jutsus outside of academy and, despite protests that Minato gave, some training in controlling the Kyuubi s Yuki for Sora. Because of this, Fancirl club that rivaled Sasuke s and his attitude, his ego was rivaled only by Sasuke. Kallen wasn't part of Akane s friends because she didn't want Sora in her circle. They didn't knew that Kallen has always hated her brother. He treated Kallen as his servant, took award from works she did, and because of Sora she was treated as heir. Most of village didn't even knew that she existed, and during birthdays she celebrated it alone. She didn't have any friends because they all wanted to become friends of Sora through her. She had been walking through festival area looking for something to eat until she had unfortunately crashed into large group of drunken civilians. "You bitch. You must they had crashed to us in order to steal our wallets," one said with sake bottle in his hand. "No way. I have never stolen anything and I only touched you by the accident. Don lie wench. I know that you search things from piles. I they seen you. If you wanted money we could give you little after you have given something." Other said while reaching his hand towards her crimson shorts. "Don touch me," she shouted while taking her old kunai and moving away. "Kitten has claws, I see. I love feisty ones. Leave her alone," two voices said same time, and civilians looked seeing three girls. Akane was in stance taught in academy glaring towards civilians, and Junko had taken her wooden sword and glared also in stance. Akane and Junko had great sense of justice and they couldn't let something like this happen. It was that sense of justice that made them friends in first place. Hinata was watching worriedly because of great number of civilians, and she heard what could happen in these situations. Well, Hyuga and Uchiha princesses. Royalties are here Now that there is only women in Uchiha, it is said that they all shall be pregnated in early age in order to revive great Uchihas. Let's see what they been taught to do in bed. You can do that. I want to know, did Hyuga heiress inherit her mother s large S? Then they recognized Akane. Look boys. It s that damn demon fox. How dare she come here? She has always insulted us after killing our families and bewitching our Hokage like that red-headed slut. You may have fooled shinobis, but we civilians know better, and you don't escape the punish that you deserve now. Girls started to really fear for their lives and started to back away. They should run to get help from Anbu, but now it was too late. Unfortunately, other group of civilians came from behind eager to help punish demon. Then they started to move closer to girls and said what they were going to do. You won get away from this, shouted Akane. I can't believe that the Hokage is willing to let that monster become a shinobi and be trained to get stronger, said one civilian. I know, the Hokage has always been too soft, especially when it came to that demon, said another. We should have had her killed the moment that the Sandame had sealed the fox into her and ended its existence once and for all, since the fact that it's even alive now is an insult to everyone that day, said a third civilian. Then let's do it since I know a lot of guys would love to kill that wretched thing for good, said the first civilian. Yeah, am in. I even get my brother and a few friends of his, since he always told me he would love a chance to gut that demon and send her the hell where she belongs, said the third civilian. Fine, then we met back in 2 hours, after which we hunt that hell spawn down and send him off to hell, said the second, after which the 3 men left. Please don't do that, said girls with fear in their eyes. Save you pleads for someone else monster it time to die, shouted a civilian man. And we celebrate it with these 3 girls since they should be honored for serving heroes like us. And again is seen ugly side of humans which they hide under lies of being noble and thinking they are highest beings. That arrogance shall be what eventually takes away their position when their place is shown. Was suddenly heard before civilians could touch girls. Civilians looked behind to see young tall boy in brown, dirty rag, blue pants and black shinobi sandals. He also had dirty looking blonde hair, some of the bluest eyes ever seen and notable markings below them. Think Saya Kudo face from Demonking Daimao. Fuck off kid, this is not your business. Civilian shouted and boy threw rag in ground showing athletic body with so many scars that were only seen in Enko victims that she had tortured years with her friend's interrogation department USIND lots of knives and needles. His pants were up by some black belt and his entire right arm was covered in bandages like Akane had seen boy named Lee do. In that you are wrong. It became mine business at the moment you began. That made all persons in street watch him. You bastard, cried civilian as he charged forward with his kunai. As he did the boy stood still and did not even move an inch. Girls were yelling him to get away. He was about to stab him in stomach when he grabbed hand of man and pushed him away. He then glanced at his stomach and raised his eyes towards man who charged again. Just as the civilian was about stab him with his kunai, the boy quickly sidestepped the attack and then grabbed the civilian wrist. He then used his other hand to push in the civilian elbow inward and in one quick motion he snapped the civilian arm in 2. Making him scream and collapse because of pain. Come on, he is just one boy. He can't beat us all, cried a member of the mob as he charged forward with his knife, after which the rest of the mob charged forward as well. Girls could only watch fearing for the sake of the boy who was their age and fighting alone against tens of adults. As the lead civilian charged forward with his knife and was about to stab the boy in the stomach. The boy caught the civilian wrist just before the knife could penetrate him, after which the boy then twisted the civilian man arm with such force he broke the arm. The boy then lifted the civilian man arm upward which then caused the arm to snap, causing the man to scream out in pain and collapse on the ground. After which the boy went and engaged the rest of the mob. Akane continued to stare silently towards face of this Naruto. Other girls Colin, Junko and Hinata looked wide-eyed at both Akane and this Naruto boy. So this is that lost twin of Akane-chan and missing child of Namikaze's who was kidnapped all those years ago. After bit of tension and silence which was only interrupted by groaning civilians in ground, they heard also someone to arrive. Naruto looked at his left with his serious expression, tensing a bit and readying himself to fight in case those were supporters of villagers that were coming. He relaxed and girls sighed from relief when they noticed that those were small group of Anbu who had heard noises from alley and came to check it up. Anbu noticed groaning civilians and recognized 3 girls who were sitting against the wall. Who did this? What in the name of the Rikudo happened here? Spoke leader of ANBUs. Junko-sama, Hinata-sama and Akane-sama. Are you alright? Is this boy doing something for you? He finished taking kunai and pointing it towards Naruto, who tensed once again and got up in battle stance. Seeing dangerous situation and for what direction this was going to, Junko decided to speak. No, he hadn't done a thing for us. If anything, he saved us. Those drunken animals attacked us and almost raped us when we tried to help. She turned her sight towards where Colin would have been, but stopped speaking when she noticed that Colin wasn't anywhere to be found. Other girls also watched around while sitting still. They had forgotten Colin when they had turned their full attention towards Naruto and Anbu. Where did she go? Asked Hinata. Naruto answered for that. She left soon after Anbu arrived and tried not to get attention to herself. What? Why didn't you try to stop her? Said Junko. I didn't see reason to stop her from leaving as she was quite fine. Junko then turned her attention back to Anbu. Anyway, those civilians wanted to kill Akane-chan and do other things for rest of us. Just before they could start, this boy arrived and fought alone against all of them. Wait just a minute, you say that this young barely teen-looking boy, all alone, beated dozens of adults? Some of these were in Ninja Academy when they were kids. I remember some of them from my days in academy. Yes, he did, and now I think you should lower your weapon and take these shits for Ibiki, because if I remember correctly, trying to rape someone, especially minors, and murder attempt are heavily punishable crimes. Captain of Anbu team did just that. Very well. We will take these persons in custody and you should tell about this for Hokage-sama. Should we take you to hospital? No thanks. We were not injured and we can take this boy to hospital by ourselves, said Akane while girls started to stand up. Naruto, who had been silent a little while, turned his gaze towards girls. Excuse me, but I am not injured, so why I should go to that awful place? Besides, you haven't told answers to my earlier questions. How are we related and how you know that my name is Naruto? Okay, Naruto, we will get answers to all of your questions in hospital, and there we can do a blood test in order to tell are we really related. Just please come with us, spoke Akane. Naruto racked his pros and cons in his mind little before answering. Very well. Could you tell where this hospital is? Hinata told him. Well, let us take you there. Naruto's eyes remained unchanged and he said, I don't want to be a bother. Akane wanted to know a little more about this guy and said, it's no bother at all. Besides me, Junko and Hinata wouldn't feel right letting you go off by yourself in your condition. Naruto shrugged it off and said, lead the way. Meanwhile, Colin was watching from behind the corner of alley while Anbu gathered who wanted to walk away. She had wanted to hear more about her mysterious savior, but she also didn't want to be bothered by those three princesses of three of the some greatest families in Konoha. That is why she escaped quickly and silently behind corner when arrival of Anbu had cleared her head. From what she heard from what Akane said, she started to suspect that Naruto is that lost son of Yondaime, and Colin felt strange pain when she thought how he will eventually turn to same as other people and think her as a burden. Then she noticed Naruto to turn his head little so that no other could notice it, to look it straight to her eyes and smiled small reassuring smile for her. Like he had known about conflict inside Colin. Colin quickly turned behind corner to hide herself fully as she felt her chest's pain to ease. She clutched her clothes above her s little. What was this good feeling? Hinata, Akane and Junko started walking ahead of Naruto and he was following behind them at least 7 feet away. Junko and Hinata would look back every now and then to make sure that he was following them, which he was while looking around himself. Hinata leaned next to Akane whispering, Akane-chan, he looks like your two-san, ni-san, and yourself. Akane looked back again and whispered to Hinata and Junko, I thought so too. But my dad always said, leave your mind open to the possibility that you're wrong. It's too much of a coincidence. After we take him to the hospital, can you watch him? I need to tell my dad about this. Hinata was beet red, but she reluctantly agreed. Junko just decided to see it as a duty in order not to think her weird feelings she felt towards boy. Akane nodded good and she looked back at Naruto. Hey, we'll be there soon, so don't worry. Naruto responded, I'm not worried, nor am I in any hurry. Akane frowned and said to Hinata without whispering, he's not very cheerful like the rest of my family. Junko put her hands over her mouth to stifle a giggle. The 4 young kids made it to the hospital and Akane walked up to the reception desk asking, excuse me. My friend and I found this boy injured in town. The woman at the reception desk saw Akane, Junko and Hinata, though she drifted her attention to the boy and saw him covered in cuts. She looked around and saw a medic nin off to the side reading a report. Excuse me, sir, this young boy needs your assistance. The medic looked up from the clipboard he had and saw Naruto. He walked over to where Naruto was and placed the clipboard down on the reception desk. He placed his hands over Naruto's chest and a green light emitted from the man's hands as he did a diagnostic, although Naruto didn't let him analyze his bandaged arm. Let's see, he has no life-treating injuries, no broken bones, no kind of sickness. All in all, he's healthy aside from the cuts. I would look at your arm if you would let me. Naruto shakes his head indicating that he won't allow it. I show my arm when people come to ask questions about me. Medic nods, stands up and says, all he needs is some antibiotics. Take some blood samples from him and to be bandaged. Don't worry young ladies, he'll alive. All girls let out a sigh of relief at those words. Naruto suddenly spoke. There is something about my blood you should know. Medic and girls raised their eyebrows. Suddenly he raised his left arm and people gasped when one wound in it burst open letting out little blood. But what really people gasped for was that blood was pitch black. My blood in my veins is different from others. When you examine it, be very careful. My black blood is highly mutative and I want like to be held responsible for what happens if it gets inside of somebody. People started to look black blood with some worry. What you're waiting for? Hurry and take that sample. Naruto said, little annoyed about frightened stares. The medic took quickly a sample and told Naruto, alright, follow me this way and I'll take care of those wounds. Naruto complied and followed the man. Akane nudged Hinata and Junko a little bit. They got the message and ran after them. Akane watched them leave and then ran off to see her father and tell him what happened. Hokage Tower. Minato, the real Minato, was going over the work his clone had done in his absence. He however had a visitor. Arashi had dropped by and was off to the side reading one of his godfather's old books, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. Both of the blondes were so into what they were doing that they almost missed the knock at the door. Minato snapped his head up and rubbed his eyes to focus, calling out, come in. The door opened revealing his secretary who told him, Hokage-sama, you have a visitor. She moved off to the side and in his view now was his daughter. Akane was breathing a little heavy and she walked up to her father's desk. Minato smiled and said jokingly, hey Akane-chan, what's up? Haru was trying to catch her breath and she asked him, To-san, just a little while ago me, Junko and Hinata found this boy who was injured and we took him to the hospital. Arashi chuckled a little asking, did some of Kakashi's habits rub off on you and you're trying to come up with an excuse to stay out later? Akane looked to her older brother and said seriously, I'm not lying. The boy was really hurt and Minato and Arashi could tell she was really serious. Minato walked around his desk and kneeled down in front of her, placing his hands on her shoulder. That's very nice what you did, Akane-chan, so what happened to the boy? Akane looked in her father's eyes and she saw the strange blonde boy. She shook her head and said, To-san, the boy looked like you and he said his name is Naruto. She saw the look in her father's eyes was that of shock and she looked over to her brother who was now standing up and no longer seated with the same look of shock. Minato picked his daughter up and carried her out with Arashi following behind him. Minato passed up his secretary telling her in a strict tone, find me Ibiki Morino and have him go to the Konoha hospital to find me. She did as she was told and headed off to relay the message. Minato asked Haru, would anyone know where he is in the hospital, Akane? Haru managed to answer. The medic who looked at him left his clipboard on the reception desk. Arashi asked his dad, what are the chances it's him? Minato couldn't think straight right now. The thought of his son that he's never seen yet here in Konoha was all he could think about. Arashi tried asking, should we tell mom? Minato immediately said, no, by the off chance that this isn't Naruto then I don't want to get her hopes up and it turns out it's not him. The moment the two left the building they dashed off at amazing speeds that made them out as yellow blurs. Minato and Arashi were running so fast that the Anbu who follow after the Hokage couldn't keep up and Akane was holding onto her father with all her might. Konoha Hospital. Arashi and Minato flung the doors open and they walked over with Akane still in Minato's hands to the reception desk. Everyone watched the blondes move over to the desk. Arashi saw a clipboard on the desk and quickly snatched it, reading the name off, Takamura. He looked to the receptionist asking, was Takamura the one who is healing a little blonde-haired boy? The receptionist answered, why yes he is. The girl right there came with him. They treat children in the room down that hall over there, room 19. She pointed to a hallway that was on the left side of the lobby. Minato and Arashi immediately headed down the hallway toward the room number. Arashi started reading off the numbers on the doors, 16, 17, 18, 19. Right there, they saw the room and Minato reached out for the handle, but froze. Akane climbed out of her father's now loose grip and just saw him stuck looking at the room number. She reached up and touched her father's hand, who in turn looked at her. She seemed to give him a sincere look and nodded to him. Minato smiled and placed his hand on the doorknob and opened the door. Inside was Junko, Hinata, Takamura, and the other little boy who was called Naruto. All four looked at the door and saw their visitors. Takamura, Junko and Hinata bowed and politely said, good morning Hokage-sama. Minato walked in front of the boy who did look a lot like him and Arashi. He stood directly in front of him and saw that his scars were all bandaged. Minato mustered a smile and asked the young boy, "What's your name?" Naruto still held his uninterested look in his eyes and answered truthfully, "My name is Naruto, I don't have a last name." The Kage asked next, "How old are you?" Again the boy answered the question given to him, "I turned 12 years old last October 10th. Akane said, "Hey, that's my birthday, I turned 12 as well." Minato looked at the medic asking, "Did you get a blood sample?" The medic nodded and Minato unraveled his sleeve showing his bare arm. "Take a blood sample from me and send both mine and Naruto's here to get analyzed." "You know what I mean too." The medic really did understand, so he took out a syringe and took some of his blood, and then he took a second syringe that was already filled with blood and left the room. Arashi looked the boy over and saw many similarities and did not think this a hoax or a coincidence that a boy looked so much like his father. He placed a hand on his father's shoulder and said, "I'm going to send a shadow clone to alert Mom. She deserves to know." Minato wasn't really listening, but nodded anyway. Arashi summoned up a clone and watched as the clone ran out of the room to go get Kushina. Naruto was still seated in his bed looking at the man in front of him, not saying a word. He wasn't showing any emotion at all, nor was he worried or concerned about the whole situation unraveling in front of him. Akane and Hinata walked next to him and pulled 2 chairs on both sides so they could sit with him. Junko preferred standing next to him. Hinata asked him, "Naruto-kun, where are you from?" At this point Junko and Hinata were too curious about the boy, and Hinata didn't even notice that she didn't stutter at all in that sentence. Naruto looked at Hinata and he looked straight into her eyes and said, "Closest thing for me to call home was in Hidden Swamp Village. But I haven't been there since its destruction by hands of Haruki." Minato and Arashi were both simply flabbergasted that he talked about that. Naruto continued by saying, "Since then I've been sleeping in forests." Akane poked his arm and asked, "Did you live with anyone else?" "I once lived with person I considered as big bro, but right now he is somewhere between life and death," Naruto said with sad look. Minato decided then it was time to tell Naruto about their ideas about his lost identity. Minato kneeled down in front of Naruto and said, "Listen, Naruto-kun. 12 years ago my son was kidnapped when he was a newborn." Naruto didn't say anything for that, just stared at him, so Minato continued, "But me, my wife, Arashi here, and even Akane the girl sitting next to you believed that he was alive and well somewhere, and we did everything in our power to find him and bring him home. However, it seems that he came home on his own." Naruto remained silent for a moment and he said simply, "You think, no wait, you know that I am your son is what you're saying?" Minato nodded and pulled Naruto in for a hug, and the boy didn't refuse. Naruto was still seated and just let the man hug him, and Naruto could hear slight sobbing sounds coming from him and from Akane, while Hinata and Junko shed some tears. Naruto then said, "I don't understand. Ninjas never show emotions, and I always thought even a cage was above that." Arashi told Naruto, "That is true, Naruto, but ninjas are just as human as the civilians, daimyos, soldiers, and the rich. We are not emotionless 24/7. Naruto was able to see the man since he was glancing over Minato's right shoulder. Minato broke his hug from his son when the door flung open, revealing Kushina, who came back alone. Arashi at that moment gained his clone's memories and saw that the clone also found Ibiki, who was on his way to the room, so it disappeared. Kushina was panting heavily and her eyes were glued to the boy sitting between Akane, Junko and Hinata. She walked over to Naruto and Minato moved out of the way, so she was kneeling in front of him. The little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy that she only caught a glimpse of 11 years ago was sitting right in front of her now. Without warning, she pulled the boy off his bed and into her arms, hugging him and crying profusely. Hinata, Junko and Akane were shedding a little tears as well, watching how Kushina brought her right hand up to her son's head and started to stroke his long blonde hair. Naruto remained in her arms and asked, "Who are you?" It stung a lot to Kushina to hear those words from a son she hasn't seen in 11 years, but forced herself to remember that he was kidnapped and that he wouldn't know of any of them. Kushina broke from her hug, looking him in his eyes that immediately reminded her of her husband, oldest son, and daughter, Minato-kun. "This is him, this is our son. A mother knows these things." Naruto's eyes remained on hers as he said, "You're my mother?" Kushina nodded and he said, "I have a pretty mother. Your hair is especially beautiful." Kushina again pulled the boy into a hug, happy to hear that. After a while Ibiki came into the room with a few anbu and he saw the scene before him. Minato walked over to Ibiki and had him meet him outside the room. Minato closed the door and told him, "We are waiting for the test results to see if he has a blood match with me. But I want you to take him and ask him a few questions and get Inoichi involved." Ibiki nodded agreeing and said, "I'll make sure to do a full check and I'll have Inoichi do a complete search of his mind." "You have my word." Minato thanked him and moved out of the way. Ibiki walked into the room alone and saw that Kushina was still hugging him and he asked, "Kushina-sama, I'm sorry but we need to borrow him and ask him a few questions about his captor." Kushina only held him tighter, not wanting to let him go. Minato came back in and said, "Kushina, please. Naruto will be coming back home, that's a promise." Naruto felt her grip loosen and she moved back enough to see his face. Kushina leaned forward and gave him a kiss on his forehead and said, "I'll see you soon." Naruto looked to Akane and said, "Thank you for bringing me to the hospital, sister." Akane blushed and started rubbing the back of her head out of embarrassment. Naruto turned and looked at Hinata and Junko, who were already blushing, and said, "Thank you for keeping me company. Beautiful angels." At that moment Hinata's face turned so red that made the original color look pink and she fainted in her seat. Kushina caught her and thought, "Yeah, he's Minato's son alright." Junko just retreated until her back hit wall. She was blushing and speaking incoherent words. Suddenly Inoichi appeared in front of door. Ibiki walked over to Naruto and sat next to him. "I start now questioning and it is better that other kids are not here during it." Minato nodded his head. Arashi told his father, "I and Ka-san need to watch over this." Minato agreed to this. Minato leaned into the doorway and told Kushina and his daughter, "Come on, take girls home and don't worry Kushina, we won't start until you come back." Kushina walked up to him and kissed him square on the lips and Akane said, "Ew. I don't want to see my parents kiss." She walked over to Hinata and picked up Hinata, carrying her on her back. Kushina broke the kiss from her husband and looked to Akane, who was carrying Hinata like a backpack, and said, "Come on, Hinata can sleep at the mansion." Akane agreed and passed up her father. Junko just followed them, muttering strange words in her own worlds, and her face was still red. When Kushina returned she sat down next to Minato and Ibiki started. "Would you tell what you know about how you came in Numakagore?" Naruto thought that question little bit while lying in bed before answering. "I was so small that I don't remember much. I did once overheard that I was kidnapped by two brothers from AIM for sake of challenge and fun. After kidnapping they took me to Numa no Kuni and there I was sold for Numakagore's Jutsu Labs." "What do you mean for Jutsu Labs?" asked Ibiki with interested tone, and Minato and Kushina started to fear what answer would be. Numakagore has long history in creation of new jutsus for the sake of trading and gaining edge towards other villages by any means necessary. Almost all experiments there are something that are usually connected to Orochimaru, as they won't be afraid of usage of slaves for the sake of human experiments. To see what jutsus do for the person, after effects for usage of forbidden jutsus, and tries to add kekkei genkeis in others. Resurrect dead kekkei genkeis or even outright create artificial kekkei genkeis. Most experiments done to me are for the sake of latter. Those people took away my humanity. Although my two parents are humans," he gestured his left hand towards Minato and Kushina, "I certainly am not." "You are wrong," Kushina suddenly cried. "No matter what was made for you, being human is something that hasn't been taken from you. You are still human." Naruto started to sit. "Let me show you two things. First, take a good look at my belt." They took a look at strange black belt as it started somehow unhold itself. When it was totally out, all people in room except Naruto himself gasped when they looked closely and saw it connected to Naruto's body just above his butt. It wasn't a belt, but some strange looking black tail. "One. If that did not convince you, then there is this," Naruto said and started to take off his bandages. Hand that came out drew even more and stronger gasps. It was like some kind of demonic fingerless clove made off black and crimson scales. Middle of it in top and bottom was line of azure light, and fingers that came out looked like they were made off that light and were pointy as stakes, too. "When I cry tears of red blood, but my actual blood is pitch black, just like you must have noticed when you took blood sample from me. You might want to know that my blood is very mutative. I won't be responsible what will happen to you if it gets on somebody. Oh, and there is that. That? I have form that I can take which doesn't even resemble human. I think this form is my human form and that other form is my true form. If you don't mind, I would like to keep that form as a secret and I want like to show it. That form takes a lot out of me. Minato started to feel ill in his stomach and Kushina shed some tears. Now they really started to feel bad and guilty about failing to protect their son and not to find him and bring him back to Konoha where he could have had normal life. After some little more questioning which didn't bring much information about Naruto's life since he didn't remember much because of experiments they let Inoichi in Naruto's mind. That was pretty much useless thing to do. Naruto's mind was so much in mess and there was so many barriers that Inoichi had to give up after only finding memories of pain both physical and emotional and misery that Naruto got while in Numakagore. Arashi voiced his opinions with very colorful language and said that if village were not destroyed he would march there himself and place Rasengans in their ass. Minato had to scold Arashi for thinking that, but he did it with only few words. In her mind Kushina was thinking to do something far worse than what Arashi suggested. I promise to you Naruto that elemental nations will hear about what Numakagore has done. Promised Minato. Then Kushina who had been in melancholy got idea how to cheer things up. But now you are here and that is most important thing. You can gain new friends from Akane's Fryan. I will decide myself who I take as my friend. Naruto put through. Being friends with sis is irrelevant. If they aren't good type of people in my opinion I won't accept them as my friends. Fair enough. We will guide you through life and you could go to Ninja Academy learn cool things. There would be easy to find new friends and we could help you in your way. What you say? I am sure you would enjoy about life as Konoha's shinobi. But if you don't want to be ninja we will also support that decision. Naruto thought about it for a moment. Sounds good thing to do. Alright, I will go to this academy of yours, but I have one thing to say. What you want? Just say and we might help you in that. I can go to Ninja Academy and become ninja, but with one rule. While in academy and when I am assigned in team I don't want to be taught in any type of jutsus or be taught in anything that uses chakra. Be it either academy jutsu, tree and water walking or even how to add chakra in my body. If you promise me that I will go to ninja career. That surprised everybody in the room. They expected him to demand to be learned early in higher techniques, not flat out say that he doesn't want to learn any jutsu or anything that makes ninja. Well ninja. Not to be learned in jutsus or anything considering chakra. But how you accept to be shinobi if you won't have any special moves, said Minato finally. Naruto started to watch outside of window. See dad, I have never been taught anything by anyone. For most it's weakness, but for me it's one of greatest advantages I have. I am blank tablet. Because I haven't been taught about world I can see it with different angle than most without anyone's influence. It opens world around me without any veils blocking my view. In battle that means nobody but me knows anything about my skills. Also because I don't like the world that we live in I don't want skills that would make me part of it and jutsus are reason why world is like this. I can understand that, but besides, Naruto started to smirk showing his canine-like teeth. Who says that you have to use chakra in order to cause miracle-like effects? Then he placed his mutated arm above himself. Everyone watched at arm and started to notice some azure blue sparks had started to swirl around it. Sparks gained more speed and looked like small shooting stars while leaving lines of light behind and creating more sparks. Soon whole river of azure light was dancing around Naruto's arm and then it broke away and started to swirl around Kushina. She couldn't think anything else than how beautiful it looked like. After few seconds river of light returned to Naruto and was swallowed by his mutated arm. Little time nobody said anything while comprehending what had just happened. Eventually it was Inoichi who spoke. I don't know what it was, but defiantly not chakra. It has some resemblance for nature's chakra, but it was more powerful and I don't know, cosmic. What was it? You were right about saying it'd been cosmic. It was cosmical energy that rules over other energies, also called mana. It is used to influence other existing energies. I found it only because of my changes. I call art that uses mana, magic. Oh, and for your information jutsu practitioners can't use even tiniest amount of magic. As soon as you tap into chakra you lose chance to touch other special kind of energies like mana. That is one of greatest reason for me not to learn about jutsus. My dream is to change this world for eternity. I want to influence world in same way that Rikudo Sennin once did. And magic is huge stepping stone for that change to happen like jutsus once did. Magic will someday take over world from jutsus and ninjas who practice that art and keep battles alive. They had to admit that Naruto's dream was not small by any standards. He wanted to become same that Rikudo Sennin of legend once did. It was great shame that magic and jutsu can't exist in one person, and it showed why Naruto couldn't learn jutsus. It was also little sad for Minato and Kushina that Naruto doesn't want to learn about jutsus or aspects of life. They had dreamed about teaching him jutsus like Rasengan and how world works. Now they have to settle in teaching Arashi and Akane. Minato sighed. Okay Naruto, I shall make arrangements so that you don't need to learn jutsus, but you have to practice that magic of yours during those classes and learn about other aspects of shinobi life. No slacking off. Also you have to find substitution for 3 academy jutsus. Naruto smiled. Don't worry Dad, I will work around clock in creation of spells if you so want. I like it almost as much as ramen eating, and I have already substitute spells for Bunshin, Kawarimi and Henge. That about concludes all for now, said Ibiki. We might ask some more later regarding towards Numakagore, but now you should rest little. We will send you a doctor to give little sleeping medicine. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes as he started to take a nap. Other people left room with as little sound as possible. After doctor gave Naruto little medicine, Minato told Ibiki and Inoichi in hallway, "Thank you both for all your help. Ibiki, can you bring Naruto to us? We're taking him home." Ibiki did as he was told and he left back to the room to go fetch Naruto. Inoichi looked back at the Hokage asking, "Ibiki told me that you were doing a test on his blood. Did the results come back yet?" Minato smiled and told him, "Yeah, the results were sent to my office. Since Kushina is a blood donor at the hospital, they took some of her blood as well, and it came back that Naruto is without a doubt our son." Inoichi smiled and told them congratulations. Ibiki returned a short while later carrying sleeping Naruto. Kushina immediately walked over to Ibiki and took Naruto from him, carrying him. "What about civilians that attacked girls? What will happen to them?" asked Ibiki. Minato spoke with dark voice, "I take care of council. You and Anko can use them for your entertainment for a while." Ibiki answered with little sadism in his voice, "It shall be done." Minato and Arashi smiled and they bid goodbye to Ibiki and Inoichi, and they left, heading to get Akane from the Hyuga compound and to head back home. Hokage Mansion. Arashi went to get Akane and had made it back home after his parents. Akane ran through the house to find Naruto. She ran into the living room and saw her mother sitting on the couch still holding Naruto, smiling. The little blonde girl walked over to her mother and Kushina held her hand out for her daughter to join. Akane climbed on the couch and laid down as well. Arashi told his mother. Inoichi said that Naruto-kun might be out for a few hours since this was his first time his mind was under that much stress, so he'll sleep good tonight. Minato came back in the room wearing just his blue ninja jumpsuit, looking at how happy his wife was to have her child back. Both Arashi and Minato took a seat on the couches in the living room to relax. Arashi, however, asked his dad, "What will we tell the village and the council?" Minato explained how this would happen. "I called for a meeting to be scheduled for tomorrow and I will tell them then. Naruto will be enrolled in the academy." Akane overheard the conversation and asked in a kind of tired voice, "So Naruto-ni will be going to the academy with me?" Akane was smiling and was very happy to hear that her twin would be going with her to school from now on. Kushina kissed Akane on the top of her head saying, "Yes, Naru-kun will go to school with you." Minato even added, "I'll see if I can get Naruto in the same class as you if you want, Akane-chan." Akane immediately lit up, "I'd like that too, san." Little later in Hokage Mansion, Naruto slowly awoke and realized that he was no longer in the hospital. The place was too bright and it looked like a child's room. He got out of the bed he was laying in and looked around. He walked over to the dresser and opened the drawer and found no clothes at all. He walked over to the toy chest next and found a few toys. Naruto never had toys and never played with any, and he wasn't going to start now. After looking around for a moment, he walked to the door and opened it and noticed a plaque on the door that had his name on it. Naruto looked back in the room and said to himself, "This is my room?" He walked out and closed the door and walked downstairs and wandered into the first room, which was the kitchen, and standing at the stove cooking was his mother. Kushina was cooking some curry and rice for dinner. Also in the kitchen was Minato, who was sitting down at the table filling out some documents. Naruto made his presence known by clearing his throat, catching both of his parents' attention. Kushina and Minato both noticed Naruto and he saw his father walk over to him asking, "Hey Naruto-kun. Sleep well?" Naruto nodded and asked, "Where are we?" Minato answered, "We are in the Hokage mansion, our home." Naruto looked around the very large kitchen and was impressed, but he didn't show it. Kushina put the curry on to simmer for a moment and walked over to Naruto and asked him, "Naruto-kun, what's your favorite foods?" The little blonde thought about it and he said, "I like ramen, onigiri, and red bean soup." Kushina smiled that he liked ramen. Minato told Naruto, "Your siblings are in the cage training ground. Just go down that hall and it's the door with the sign above it." Naruto nodded and walked away looking for the cage training ground. He saw the big two doors and pushed them open. He noticed that right when you enter you're standing in a patio area for people to watch and he saw that the training ground was a huge area. He walked out of the patio area and he saw Akane being trained by Arashi. Naruto sat down and started watching quietly. After watching some moves they made, Naruto went back to inside to find Kushina cleaning around. "Would you like some help?" Naruto asked. Kushina smiled with bucket of soap water and mop in her hands. "No thank you. This is your day and I don't want to make you work. With magic at disposal no work is needed." He pointed his finger at brush leaning at wall and chanted while shooting little stardust at them. "Go tools and with little haste, clean this entire place." For Kushina's great surprise, brush, mop and bucket started to fly around while cleaning. Naruto said, "That was one of elementary spells. When you want them to stop, clap your hands 3 times while saying, 'Stop little tools, stop.' It can be used also to dishwashing. Say when you want more magical help or food is ready. I go to watch around little bit." With that he walked towards mansion's library. Kushina broke out of his daze and sighed. What a shame that only he can use this magic. These kind of things can't be made with jutsus. She then walked towards kitchen to continue food making when she heard 3 yells. Minato, Akane and Arashi had noticed living cleaning tools. Tomorrow morning, Kushina and the kids were roaming around the village just having a good time. She had got some underwear and a few other things Naruto would need to start at the academy. Akane came to a stop close to a store and saw something that caught her eye. She called her mother over to come look at it too. Hinata and Naruto however were standing in the middle of the walking road watching them. Hinata was blushing a bit since this was the first time she was standing alone with a boy who just yesterday called her a beautiful angel. For her that was the first compliment she got like that and she didn't know what to do at the time but to faint. She felt ashamed of herself for that, so she decided to muster up as much courage as she could to talk to him. But before she could, Kushina and Akane returned with shopping bags. Kushina and the kids walked into this well-known ninja shop that had everything for ninjas. The owner of the shop was named Quali Shinobi, a middle-aged man wearing a white Chinese-style outfit with black shoes. He had long black braided hair, a goatee, and brown-colored eyes. Kensai was known as a kenjutsu master in his youthful days before he retired early when his daughter was born. Quali's wife Tenzin Shinobi was a seamstress who could make the best ninja outfits for anyone. But her looks can be deceiving. She had long brown hair that was tied into 2 Chinese-style buns, brown eyes, she was a few years younger than her husband, and cream-colored skin. She wears a pink kipao outfit with floral designs on it, and knee-high white stockings. She looked like a model, but in actuality she was a martial artist that studied Chinese Kempo and like her husband she retired fairly young to run the shop and take care of their daughter. Quali was at the counter polishing a few weapons and his wife was roaming around the fairly large store restocking the shelves. Tenzin saw her customers and called out, "Oh good morning Lady Namikaze." She greeted with a smile. Kushina greeted her back, "Good morning to you too Quali-san, Tenzin-chan." The weapon shop owner put the weapons off to the side of the counter leaning over it asking, "So what brings you here?" Kushina called the kids in, "Kids come in." Naruto, Hinata, and Akane came inside looking around at the store. Kushina told them, "Now don't touch anything in this shop. Quali-san makes sure that all his weapons are sharp." The kids obeyed and stayed close. Kushina asked Tenzin, "Tenzin-chan, I was wondering if you could make a few custom outfits for my son here." Kushina took Naruto's hand and brought him a little forward for her to see. Tenzin and Quali already knew who Naruto was, since Quali is asked to come to civilian ninja council meetings and was told about Naruto's return and he told only his wife. Tenzin smiled and walked over to Naruto, pulling out measuring tape that was wrapped around her wrist, and began taking measurements of Naruto's entire height, arm lengths, legs outside and inside, etc. After she got done with measuring Naruto, she asked Kushina, "So Lady Namikaze, anything special you want done?" Kushina brought her finger to her chin, thinking, maybe 3 outfits of a normal ninja long-sleeve shirts and pants in black, blue, and maybe a faded black color. 6 shorts in the same colors, 6 more ninja pants in the same colors as well, and 12 regular shirts and long-sleeve shirts to match the shorts and pants, 2 pairs of pajama outfits, and finally a nice kimono for special occasions. Naruto was a little stunned. All his life he only had 3 sets of clothes, and that was all he really needed. But here he was, and his mother was ordering custom-made clothes in large orders. Hinata thought that those wouldn't be enough. Since she lived wealthy, she had a lot of clothes in her closets. He thought the woman would be overwhelmed, but she merely said, "That's all. You're not going easy on me, are you, Lady Namikaze?" said Tenzin with a smile followed by a chuckle. The Namikaze shook her head, giggling. "Trust me, that's all he'll need for now. We still need to get him some sandals, socks, and some other everyday clothes from the other shops." "Tell me, how long will this be done?" Quali told her. "Don't worry, Lady Namikaze. Since it's my wife making them, they'll be done soon enough, and I'll even deliver them to your home once they're done." Naruto thought about things while watching around shop and said to Tenzin, "Excuse me, but if it doesn't have too much trouble, I would like to look around and suit myself in style I would like myself." "No trouble at all. Just take what you want," Tenzin said with smile, and started to talk adult things with her husband and Kushina while girls just looked around. Naruto took some clothes and went in other room to dress himself. Soon he came back and asked what they thought about him. He now had dark brown suits with sleeveless t-shirt, black belt that kept his pants up, while he kept his tail inside pants. He also had long scarf, arm-length clothes and black shinobi sandals. Kushina said her comments as Akane only thought that it suited for him, and Hinata thought he was, at her embarrassment, much more handsome than before. "Not something that I would buy at Fist, but I have to admit it suits you quite well. It suits my style. I would like to buy these right now." Colin was watching it outside behind window. She couldn't get Naruto's smile that he gave to her in alley back then, and warmth that gave for her out of her mind. So she started to watch him at far, and now she could only think how handsome he looked. She was hiding behind wall, but when they walked out of store, she noticed that Naruto had noticed her, and for her immense and sudden joy he gave her secret smile once again. Colin just stood in there while Naruto, Kushina, Akane and Hinata walked towards Hokage Mansion. They had still other things to do before Naruto goes first time to Ninja Academy early tomorrow.